Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 12 of Rapid Fire with me, your host, Wolvie. And I am here today with one of the hosts of the Conclave podcast, friend of Deployment Zone, all-round general nice guy and advice giver. I'm here with Quipster. How you doing?
Hello, friends. I am good today. I'm excited for this these questions.
Yeah, the challenge, it's gaining some steam. We started off with our first couple of times being like 3 minutes and 40 odd seconds set by some of the guys in Loaded Bolter. Pathetic if you ask me. And everyone else who's been outside of the group who didn't help plan and didn't know the questions ahead of time has come in and absolutely smashed their times out of the water. So they don't really have too much to answer for.
So no pressure then.
Yeah, I know. So just like we always do, first thing I'll do is we'll just get straight into these rapid fire questions. We'll time you. We'll see how fast you get. I know Tanya, the war mistress, she's particularly interested to see how you do. Her time was 1 minute and 37 seconds.
Okay.
So that's
the time to beat.
That's definitely a time for you to try and beat. I'm singling her out, and I'm sure she won't mind.
She's a good friend. We're in competition.
Yeah, I know. And I'm enjoying how much pride people are taking in taking like first and second and stuff like that. So we'll see how far we can get your name up the leaderboard.
Okay.
So when you are ready, right, and your time starts now. How many years in the hobby?
6.
What are your game systems that you follow?
Age of Sigmar a little bit and 40k.
What are your current armies?
Imperial Fist Custodes.
What was your first miniature?
Space Marine Sergeant.
What was your first full army?
Tau.
What model or unit have you enjoyed painting the most?
Vindicar Assassin.
What model or unit have you enjoyed painting the least?
All Eldar units.
What was the last model you completed?
Repulsor Executioner.
How much hobby time do you get per week?
12 hours.
What is the current model you're working on?
A Gladiator.
What's your single favorite thing about the hobby?
The community.
Least favorite thing about the hobby?
The community.
Who or what got you into the hobby?
I walked past Games Workshop once and I was like, oh my God, what's that?
What keeps you in the hobby?
The community.
What is your one hobby target for this year?
Have 4,000 points of Imperial Fists.
Oh, that's your time. That was pretty quick.
How quick was that? I gotta know. You gotta tell me.
So the quickest that we've had, if they actually joint top, is Poison Ivy painting, obviously Fiona, and I believe it was Craig. Yeah, Craig, OG Paintworks. Both did 1 minute and 11 seconds.
Okay.
You did 1 minute and 13 seconds.
Ah, so close.
So those guys have got joint first, but that puts you in second, I guess, if you look at it that way. Whew. But that puts you pretty high up there.
I'll take that. I'll take it.
And you beat Tanya by a full 20 odd seconds. So, you know, she'll not be pleased.
It's funny. She's gonna come on. She's coming on the Conclave on Saturday. So
is she?
She'll be like, I won.
I will definitely have a listen to that one. So
amazing.
You said that you obviously getting into the hobby was you just walking past a GW. What was it then when you walked past and you saw it and you were like, I gotta go in here?
I mean, it's that you're British, so you'll get this. It is a thing in Britain that every town and city has a games workshop.
Yes.
And it's always somewhere on the high street. And it's always like somewhere not quite on the high street, but like a little bit tucked away. So you'll like walk past it and you'll see it out of the corner of your eye and be like, it'd be like one of those shops in Harry Potter, the magic ones that appear only for wizards. And you just be like, oh, what is that? And you'll keep on like, it was the one in Watford for me because I'm from Watford, and it's in a shopping centre called the Harlequin, and it's tucked away in a little corner at this Games Workshop. And I'd always walk past it, and you always see in the window they have the big displays of all the miniatures, and you're just like, what is that? That is so cool. And obviously being like a 9-year-old, it took a while to pluck up the courage to go in there and be like, hello, what is this? I would like to be part of your club, please. And so, yeah, eventually just walked in and was just like, yeah, I think this is where I want to be. And it just wildly escalated from there.
I'm yet to find anyone who had a more unusual Games Workshop location than us. So I was originally from Ipswich in Suffolk. And obviously I got into the hobby when I was younger. My nan, I saw some at a car boot and my nan bought them for me. And obviously that's how I started. And then I obviously learned a bit more. I was like, where is the Games Workshop? Where is It's in Debenhams. Right. And it was just one of the departments in Debenhams next to the underwear section.
What?
So, and then they got their like a proper store, and then obviously now they've moved again. But yeah, one of the original ones in this area was next to the underwear section in Debenhams. So
that's hilarious. So you can buy some Space Marines with your boxes.
Exactly. But I don't really think that was the best place to pick up women either, going standing there with like a box of Marines where the sexy underwear is. Like,
I mean, there is nothing sexier than Space Marines.
I would tend to agree. However, Death Guard are sexier.
Oh God, we'll go. I mean, we can go into Death Guard now if you really want. I have strong opinions about this.
This is Death Guard is my love. They are my absolute dream. And that was one of my questions here, because I was listening to the your more recent podcast with obviously the Conclave podcast, and you were speaking about Death Guard and how they're all minging and they're not clean, and I was like, I'm not liking this. Talk to me. Why?
Yep.
Why?
So it's always been a thing with me. Like, I am a very big fan of clean lines. Like, even like basically in all things. Like, if you look, like, my flat's a bit of a mess at the moment, but normally it's exceptionally tidy. There's like it's all clean lines. I like that in my styles of architecture. I like that in my models. And Nurgle, as an aesthetic, and the Death Guard models themselves are literally the opposite of that. They are as far from that clean lines aesthetic as you can get. And like, there's something about it that like irks me on like a soul level. And I'm just like, oh no, I can't deal with this. And I mean, I talked about this with Winters because I do a show called The Fireside Chat on DZTV. Total name drop. Definitely doing that.
Of course. I welcome them.
Amazing. But yeah, I was talking to Winters about that. And one of the other big reasons I think I like deep inside don't like Nurgle is because it hits a little bit close to home, because I have a chronic illness. I have spent literally, if you put it all together, 2 years in hospital. I don't need this to be part of my hobby as well, to just be like, oh, great, more illness stuff. Fantastic.
Anytime you can defeat it, it's like, yeah, screw you, illness.
Yeah, exactly. This is why I like being in the gym all the time as well. And now we're getting to slightly serious territory. This is one of the reasons why I like going to the gym and I like working out and I like doing sports, because, you know, when I'm suffering from chronic illness stuff, you can't do anything. And I end up losing a lot of weight. So for me, like, being bigger almost feels being further away from being ill, because I get very skinny.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a deep tangent for you.
No, that's absolutely fine. And obviously, a part of your clean lines, you do something that I appreciate very much so. My Eldar and my Death Guard have a running theme through them in that I use the color yellow. I absolutely love it. And the way you paint yellow is just, it is like, mwah, it is beautiful. It is beautiful. How do you honestly get that?
Firstly, you are too kind, honestly.
That repulsor was beautiful, and that was lovely.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the thing with yellow. It is a hard color to work with, as you'll know, because the pigment in it is just so thin. You have to layer up so much. But what I tend to find is that because it's a difficult color to work with, there are not that many yellow armies out there. So the ones that are out there really stand out, especially on the tabletop and especially on Instagram. And one thing I did quite by accident as well was when I was doing my Imperial Fists. I originally started Imperial Fists so randomly because all the Primera stuff was coming out, and I was just like, oh my god, I want some of this. Actually, this is an even wilder tangent. So the other reason I started Imperial Fist was because I was part of the original 5 guys on Team Moorhammer. I don't know if you remember that channel.
I do. Yeah.
Indeed. So each of the Moorhammer guys, we were all going to take a Space Marine chapter, and that would be our Space Marine chapter contribution to the YouTube channel.
Okay.
So I shotgunned Imperial Fists. And the reason I shotgunned Imperial Fists was because there's a board game cafe local to me called Bad Moon Cafe. And
always wanted to go there.
Oh, dude, you got to come down. We'll have a game. That would be fantastic.
Please, yeah, absolutely. When the world's a bit more normal, we'll definitely do that.
Absolutely, that is happening. But so I was in Bad Moon, and they were to sort of celebrate contrast paints coming out. They had like a contrast paint tester day, and I went there, and they gave me a free intercessor to like throw some paint on, and I put some ironed in yellow on the back of an intercessor leg just to test it out. And I looked at it, I was like, that's amazing. That is a stunning color and an amazing finish. I want an army of this. And so that was it. I was in. And so I got that. And I was also very lucky that Josh, the War Hipster, is a good friend of mine. Well, actually became a good friend of mine through lockdown. And his YouTube channel is dedicated to painting with contrast. And so I learned a lot about how to use contrast from him. And one of the things I realized was that when I first started using contrast on the Space Marines, that I was doing it a little bit wrong. I was just slapping contrast on. And what tends to happen, especially with Space Marines, they have all these flat panels. And contrast tends to not work very well on flat panels. It can pool and look very strange. And so I was like, oh God, I need to do something so that I can, stop that pooling. And rather than painting slower, like I should have done, I just dumped a load of Flash Gets Yellow on all the flat panels instead. I was like, that'll do. Why not? And what I failed to realize, and this is something that makes my yellow particularly stand out, is that actually very few people use Flash Gets Yellow for anything. Even the Games Workshop color schemes for Imperial Fist use Uriel Yellow, which is a toned down yellow, whereas mine is a lot brighter. And so I think it really catches the eye when you put it on the table or put it on Instagram. And because I've used the contrast paint, what happens is in the recesses, you get this really nice orange, as opposed to normally with Imperial Fists, where they panel line with a brown wash. And so I think that's one of the reasons my fists look quite unique.
Yeah. And I think
so. It's a very long answer.
That's you take as long as you need. And I get that with yellow. I didn't start out with I'd never really painted yellow before I was doing my my Death Guard, and I did the cloth on my first few squads, and they were just whatever colors. And then I did yellow, and I posted it on Instagram, and I got all this feedback like, wow, that yellow, like the contrast against that dark green and the rust and the dark gold colors, like that yellow is popping. So naturally I went back and I found all the cloth on all the models I'd already painted, and I changed that to yellow. Everything's been yellow since. And I'm yet to find somebody else to do a Mortarion with a yellow cloak. And that's one of those things that for me just makes him stand out. Like my Great Unclean one is yellow. Everything is now like this yellow contrast to all of the disgusting nurgly bits.
Nice.
And obviously,
are you using what yellow are you using specifically?
So I use Avaland Sunset. I've obviously got then I use like a Cassandora yellow as a like shade over it, and then just an Aerial yellow as the highlight. And that, like you say, because of how this works, obviously that's that's almost orangey. It creates that orange pooling. And then when you go over with the really bright yellow, it just creates this awesome effect. Like some of my Poxwalkers, because of how it works, it looks like they're walking in rubber suits. And I absolutely love that. They're just walking around in these bright yellow rubber suits and stuff. So yeah, it just creates this whole clean looking aesthetic compared to all of the disgusting stuff. So maybe there is a bit of me that likes all the cleanness as well. I will never admit it. So we spoke, obviously, we said about obviously catching up and having a game after lockdown, which is definitely happening, by the way.
Oh yeah.
So what will be the first thing that what will be the first sort of thing you want to do with lockdown in terms of when we can finally, I think it's only next month that you can actually play a game with somebody else inside a house. So I'm looking forward to, like, that's 5 weeks away as of literally this week. Have you picked your first opponent, or what's?
So I'm kind of in a super lucky position in a lot of ways, because I have, oh God, being in London, London is like the center of like life in the UK, I swear, because like the Warhammer community is massive in London. Like if I wanted to, I could have 15 games a week. If I had the time, easily I could arrange that, because Bad Moon is open in the mornings as well. So you could easily have 3 games a day for 7 days. Easily.
Yeah, I'm 100% jealous. Obviously, I've seen Bad Moon Calf on the thing, and me and obviously my play group and some of the other guys in Loaded Bolter, we're always like, we just want to get down there, like to just test it out and just we've got like a board games calf, and we've got a game center and stuff like that that's fairly close by. But I don't know, there's something about the way Bad Moon Calf is set up, and the name itself, you just know it's going to be a bit more lean towards the whole Warhammer, and it's one of those kind of must visit places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the reason for that is because the guys that set it up are all 40k and AOS players.
Yeah,
I mean, and so they purpose built it for that. And so go back to, but what I was saying, I'm really lucky that those facilities are there. And also I have the DZTV guys to play games with, and I have my hobby group in London called Battlefield Bermondsey. And Battlefield Bermondsey was started by my friend Charles, and he happens to run a bespoke furniture business, like super high-end furniture, and he has a woodworking shop. It's in an industrial estate, obviously, in Bermondsey, and we as a sort of club go there as well, and it opens up like a garage, so we'll be able to play Garage Hammer when people are allowed, like in gardens, because it opens into the car park.
Yeah.
So we've organized for like a little car park 500 point game.
That's the level you're going to need to start at, because if no one's rolled dice for a while, it's going to be like trying to remember the rules and
bloody tell me about it. I have it's a funny thing, like, sorry, added to that as well, I've also literally last night organized I'm doing a bat rep with Winters at some point near the end of this month, I think, because obviously DZTV is his business.
Yeah.
So his house is a filming studio, so he's allowed to have people over, and he just has to follow the same guidelines that they do on like ITV or like Sky News or whatever. So yeah, it's going to be really good. But going back to what you said, amusingly, I have barely played any games with Space Marines, and all of the games I've played with Space Marines have all been on like YouTube.
No pressure then. You can't even just sit there and have a game without the pressure. Like,
yeah, literally. Like my first ever game of 9th was a bat rep I did with Liam on DZTV with my Custodians versus his Necrons. And I'd never played Necrons. I'd never played 9th edition, and I hadn't played any Warhammer in like 5 months. And I'm sitting there just like, I think I rolled a hit now. I think that's how this game works.
Yeah, like I said, I had a game of Garden Hammer last week, and I literally took a Chaos Renegade Knight and 2 War Dogs against like another Knights list, just because you don't want that many models to try and remember. And it was just like, and even that, you walk away from, you're like, my head hurts. Like there was just enough to remember from that. I picked the bad army because I thought, well, there's less models, but in fact, I hadn't played with the Chaos Knight since 8th edition. So I was like, shit, I don't actually know what I'm doing with these. I haven't a clue. But figured it out. And it was, I think for the first few games, going for around, you know, anywhere between 500 and 1,000 points is the way to go. If you try and jump in at 2,000 points or an apocalypse, I think you're going to have a really bad day.
Yeah, I mean, this is why I'm quite glad the list I'm going to be bringing to Winters is going to be Imperial Fists.
Yeah,
but it's going to have a Hammerfall Bunker, a Repulsor Executioner, and a Gladiator, the one with the big long laser cannon. Yeah. Just because that's 3 super high point models, which is a lot less rules I have to deal with.
Except for the fact when you go to fire the Gladiator or the Repulsor, when you're like, right, let me just get my list of weapons out, starting at the top, starting at second. Like when I used to have a Repulsor, I used to have to literally, right, I'm gonna have to bring up the list here and start at the top, and I'll fire it at the like. It was not easy to keep track of those things. Especially
I've heard it takes a long time.
Especially if you've got the Executioner, which has got even more weapons. So with the Conclave podcast, then I'm a regular listener of that.
Amazing. Thank you for listening.
No, absolutely. Me sitting here with you as somebody who, you know, our Instagram page has up like nearly 1,000 followers. Our YouTube channel is still within its first couple of months, so it's only now sort of building. It must be equivalent to you sitting with like Adrian from Tabletop Titans. Like that guy, I am learning so much about Eldar from watching him and the Bat Reps, and obviously they do other little videos as well. Those guys are awesome. How did you set that up? I mean, that is awesome.
So this is a funny thing. So I don't know how this happened. It's like one thing has led to another, and basically every single guest we've had on the Conclave, except for Play on Tabletop, has been basically one that I've organized, because I just happen to know all of these people just through other people, or because I've made a video and they've seen it, or something like, or I've talked to them on Instagram. And so, yeah, getting people on the Conclave has literally just been a case of me going like, oh, you know, I guess we haven't had the Tabletop Titans guys. I can drop a line to Adrian and say hi. Or like I can ask Winters to drop them a line.
Oh, yeah.
They've like had a chat. Like stuff like that. And like, I can tell you exactly how that whole process happened, because back in the day, when I was first getting into the hobby, and this was the end of 2018, beginning of 2019, I was watching a lot of Liam on Morehammer on YouTube, and I loved his sit and talks. I loved everything he was doing. His bat reps were amazing, and I eventually was just like, yeah, okay, I'm going to join his Patreon. I'm going to join his Discord. That sounds like a really great place to be, and it was. And I actually got chatting to Liam at one point, and we bonded over the fact that we are both massive tech people. Like we both love tech and cameras and videography, and we watch all the same YouTubers as well, and so we like bonded over that.
Yeah.
And then eventually I went and filmed a bat rep with him, and we after I was actually on the train home coming back from that, and he just sent me a WhatsApp, and he was like, hey Matt, I want to expand Morehammer, I want to expand the channel, I want to create a team, I'd like you to be on it. I was like, oh my God, yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Of course, yeah.
And that led to me meeting Winters, because very soon after that was the DZTV Open Day, which I cannot wait for the next one. It's going to be amazing, because
so I saw the remnants of like a video. I saw it on YouTube, and somebody said to me, "You've got to watch this because he gets drunker and drunker." And, like by the end of the video, he's just screaming at people. I was like, I'm in for this. Yeah. And I just watched it. He starts the video going, I'm going to try and like video as much of this as I can. You know, here's some guys. By the end of it, it's, hi, Jason. Yeah. I was just literally sat there for the whole time, just laughing, because I just thought, this is brilliant. This is not somebody trying to be like a professional. This is somebody just being himself, being like one of us, a hobbyist in that environment where there's alcohol and hobby, and we would all be the same.
Honestly.
And I loved it.
Yeah. This is why one of the reasons I think we all love Winters, because like, one, he is a hilarious person when he's drunk. It is so funny watching him get wrecked. It was funny actually. So like, I actually turned up on the second day of the DZTV Open Day, and it was the day after that video was taken.
Is he a bit quieter?
Oh my God, he was not in a good place. I saw him and he was like, oh God.
I think on that same video, there was a snippet of like the morning after someone put the camera on him and he was like,
yeah. Yeah, literally. Oh God, it's so. And the worst part is Liam, who's the other half of DZTV, used to be in the army. So the man knows how to drink and he knows how to hold his drink. And he's like a big guy as well. He's like 6'2" and like he's like built like a rugby player. So yeah, he could drink Winters under the table, and Winters like kind of tries to keep up and like doesn't do well with it.
But it made for a great viewing, and I think more people need to go and find that video if you can, because it is,
oh my God,
worth it.
Absolutely,
it is just brilliant.
So funny. But yeah, so I met Winters at the DZTV Open Day the day after that video was taken. He had a bit of a hangover, and amusingly, the first thing I said to him was, "Hey, Winters," and like he knew who I was because I was friends with Liam. And he was like, "Oh, hey, great to finally meet you." And I was like, "Hey, by the way, do you want me to manage your Instagram for you? Because you don't have one yet." And like, it was this big thing. Like, Winters isn't very good with technology, so like, he'd never set up an Instagram account.
I know how that feels. I'm not very good with it either.
And so he was like, "Yeah, all right, cool." And I was like, "Okay, cool. By the way, I already made it for you. Here it is. Do you want me to manage it for you?" And he was like, "Okay, sure." So I managed his Instagram account for like quite a long while, just to get him in the game, because I was just like, "You're kind of like a niche internet celebrity influencer person. You need this in your repertoire." And yeah, I knew him quite well from helping manage his account, and from that, I got introduced to a couple of people. So I got introduced to the whole DZTV squad, and became one of them. And then I started chatting to Tanya, who the War Mistress, who you've had on this channel before, and she is such a lovely person. I love her to pieces. And
I've like I said, I've not known her for the longest time, obviously since the episode and stuff like that. But like, she's got a special place because she's awesome, absolutely awesome.
Yeah. She's such a wonderful person, and I can't even remember what it was, but we started chatting on in the DMs on Instagram, and we were just talking about the hobby and all this kind of stuff. And eventually, she was just like, she invited me to be on 40K in 40 minutes, which is a podcast that was running last year. And I went on and I was like, "Wow, this is great! I'm having a great time." And then later on, she invited me to become a presenter on 40K in 40 minutes. And that's how I met Scary, because he was a presenter as well. That's how I met Thingy from the guys from Forge the Narrative. That's how I met Steve Joel. And it kind of like ballooned from there. And I got to know Stephen Box a little bit from Vanguard Tactics, because, you know, we messaged in the DMs a little bit, and I really like all the stuff he's doing, especially to do with sportsmanship.
Yeah.
And then in the last summer, when me and the guys decided to start the Conclave, it just so happened that I kind of already knew all of these people, and I was just like, "Hey, why don't we just get Winters on the Conclave? Why don't we just get Liam on the Conclave? Like, why don't we get all these people that I already have contact with?" And so I just happened to know these people. We just got them on, and so
and I think that's kind of when our podcast finally kind of kicks off. You know, some of the guys that, you know, I've met through here, I'm not going to be like I'm not going to be a regular host on the podcast. I'm kind of leaving that to them. I've got the face, so I'm being the face. They've got the voices. So I'm obviously, I'm going to try and obviously extend invites out as well, and that's something I found when I was inviting people. I was thinking, who the hell is going to want to come on a show where, you know, we don't have a lot of following particularly yet. We don't have who's going to want to bother? Who's going to bother? And I thought, well, if you don't ask, you don't get. So I fired one off to you and fired one off to obviously Tanya and a few other people as well. And then everybody's just been, especially Tanya at the start, when she knew that I was like, I don't really know what I'm doing as such, and she gave me such cool advice. She tried to get me to use Discord. I don't know how to use it. I can't use it. So she was like, "All right, we'll do this thing on Zoom." and I've just found like everybody has been like so cool, and I don't know, I didn't expect it, and I don't know why. I just didn't expect that there would be that sort of help out there. So I've been
there's not
incredible.
this. Yeah, there isn't so much of this like, oh, I'm too big for you guys. There's none of that attitude.
No, not
like,
in the
for sure.
slightest, and I've not had that from anybody. So that's really cool.
I think. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think a big reason for that is because, number one, as a niche, Warhammer is still in its infancy. It's very small. Like, there is no Warhammer YouTube channel with 1 million subscribers on YouTube.
No.
There's no even 40K Instagram accounts that are beyond 200,000 followers. I mean, I think you've got Seed Studios who are on like 100,000, and that's the absolute pinnacle on Instagram for us. And it's small. We are still small time.
Yeah.
And so that means that everyone is still accessible. And we kind of have this get up and go is the wrong word, but I think as a community, we all want to help each other out. And I think helping out people in the community is just a big part of the hobby as well.
Massively. Because I think obviously now we are going to talk about the two sides of the community, because as you said in your thing, and most people do, their favorite thing about the hobby is the community, and their worst favorite thing, or the least favorite thing, is also pockets of the community. But you do get people who genuinely want to help. People who want to help you if you're trying something like this, want to help if you're trying, think, even if you're just learning how to play the game, if anything, painting. Obviously there's loads of painting tutorials out there. They're not doing that just for shits and giggles. They're doing that because they think, okay, well, if I paint this way and somebody else wants to learn to paint that way, that's awesome. Or you get people like Darren Latham, for example, who's an absolute idol of mine. His painting tutorials when he was doing them are absolutely out of this world. So you get all those sorts of helpful, and then you get the elitists and the gatekeepers and the racists and the anti-women and all of that side of it. As a man of color, how have you found that? Because obviously I was reading through your Instagram, doing a little bit of extra research, and I saw some posts about you receiving, I don't know if it was your first or one of the first things you'd noticed about receiving a racist comment on one of your videos. How did you feel about that and kind of manage that externally as well as internally, if we can get serious for a minute?
Of course, happy to talk about this. So being a person of color in the community, it was always my expectation that I was going to get a racist comment at some point. I knew that would happen. I didn't think it would happen as soon as it did. And it came from a very unexpected quarter, because bit of context for what happened. It was on a bat rep I did with Winters.
Yeah.
And the comment itself, someone called me the P word, which I will not utter here. And he was an American. We found out very quickly who he was. And I was just like, I didn't think that was a slur in America. I didn't think you guys knew that one. So that was a surprise. But also, trying to process my thoughts and trying to put it into words. But basically, it was something I had always expected to run into some sort of racism at some point. And at the time, I had a decision I could make. I could either completely ignore it, or I could call this out. And I could be like, right, okay, guys, look, this is a thing that has happened. This is something we need to look out for in the community. And so I called it out. There was a lot of support. A lot of people messaged me and they were like, look, this isn't on. I'm so glad you spoke up. We're 100% with you. We've reported that guy, blah, 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 blah. And I think as a person, one of the few brown guys in the community, I think it is kind of my responsibility to sort of stand up and go, look, I'm a brown guy in the community. I know there's not many of us, but I'm here and there's going to be more of us. And it was interesting as well, because I got contacted on the back of that by a couple of other brown guys in the community who were like, oh, it's really great to see someone who looks like me on the screen playing the game and being unapologetic, essentially. And so that really like gave me some warm, fuzzy feels. But yeah, It's one of those things, and I talked earlier about how the community can be the best and the worst thing about the hobby. The caveat to that, I will say, is that the people who are like the worst part of the hobby, the gatekeepers, the trolls, the misogynists, the racists, I think that they are a small part of the hobby, and I think they are a diminishing part of the hobby. I think these people are running. They're leaving. They're going to
It's
other game
not cool.
systems.
It's problem is some of it, the guys obviously do it for that attention, you know. They probably, you know, everybody wants to be the heel, they want to be the bad guy sometimes. But there's a difference between being a little bit of an asshole and being the bad guy, and then doing something like that, where then everybody just turns to you and goes, that's not cool. And you get, you know, they're expecting to get some attention. They're expecting, you know, maybe their own follower base to go up. I don't know what it is they're actually expecting, but it's actually quite the opposite. People go, fuck, I'm unfollowing that guy. I'm getting rid of that one. And it has quite the opposite effect, I think, of what they're doing. And like you say, I think they're having to, if they've got those thoughts and feelings, they're starting to learn more to keep. We've had, it just rears its head every few months. There's a little spate of something that occurs. And, you know, I've spoken to obviously a few women as part of this, and they all kind of share their experiences and stuff as well. And I thought it was quite important for you to come at it from a different angle, because obviously you're experiencing obviously similar unnecessary, unwarranted hate for no reason and for something completely out of your control, like, you know, and completely failing to take you at your merit, really. Like,
yeah, I mean, it's funnily enough, in the last episode of the Conclave, we had a long chat with a YouTuber who's been fairly big in the Magic the Gathering space. He's now exploring more stuff in 40K, isn't it? Yeah, Pleasant Kenobi, absolute legend, love the guy. And we had a long conversation about how the Magic the Gathering community kind of went through this kind of thing, but like 5 or 6 years ago, whereas we're kind of going through it now. We're kind of really re-examining those parts of the community that are transphobic, homophobic, racist, misogynistic, and we're kind of stamping down on them. It's the other thing I wanted to say actually was one thing at the moment. I think one of the big hurdles that we're going to have to like cross as a community is more women coming into the hobby. I think that is a thing that is going to be happening a lot more in the next few years. I've had arguments, not arguments, I've had debates with people about this. I genuinely think the hobby will be 50-50 men to women in 20 years, easily.
It's 100% very possible. I think things like lockdown, for example, will have helped that, because a lot of couples, they would have, I know my other half tried a Harry Potter game with me. She wasn't that into it, but she tried it. But there's going to be loads of people who are stuck in lockdown. Oh, what do you want to do? Oh, do you want to try this? Should we try this out? And they'll have got into it, and they're going to emerge, and there's going to be more people like that, and it will be things like that where it is growing. Definitely the female side of it is definitely growing, and that's awesome. Like, I've got plenty of time for that, because
it's going to be fantastic. Like, and kind of leading on from that as well, one thing that I found actually quite surprising is that there is a surprisingly large community of trans women in the Warhammer community, and I've been part of a couple of Facebook groups who are like essentially like trans support groups, and I've kind of like lent support as an ally, or I tried to. And I put out a post the other day just because it was Trans Awareness Day. Yeah. And I put out a post on my Warhammer profile saying, like, look, it's Trans Awareness Day. These people are in the hobby. Remember to use the correct pronouns, that kind of stuff. And someone, a trans person, contacted me and said, it's so lovely to see that and to know that Warhammer is the safe space I need it to be, and to see that kind of post. And I think going forward, it would be really interesting and really great to see more people in the hobby sort of come out and say, like, oh, look, I'm not putting pressure on anyone, but I think something that's going to happen more and more is we're going to have to say, like, look, this is a safe space. This is a welcoming place, and we're going to have to emphasize that to women, to trans people, to people in the gay community, to brown and black people.
Yeah, and I think
it's something we need to emphasize.
Yeah, and I can see that Games Workshop are taking some smaller steps towards it in terms of like the artwork starting to include, you know, more Space Marines of color and stuff like that. Interestingly, for no reason other than I thought it was a great idea one day, all of my Grey Knights, if they're unhelmeted, they're people of color. I just thought, do you know what, that will be really different. I've done Space Marine, obviously Space Wolves and stuff in the past, which are all just, you know, your standard Caucasian skin tones. And I thought, no, do you know what, I want to do something different. So I've rewritten like Caldor Drago and all of that, you know, they're now black and whatever else. So, you know,
love it.
And that just seems the thing. And obviously, and I've started to see more artwork where, you know, you'll start to see, you know, different complexions coming into it now, and I think that's good. They're not, you know, beating on everyone over the head with it and saying this is what we're trying to do, but they're just doing what they should do and just subtly bringing it in.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we even look, and there was actually a long Twitter post that Aaron Dembski-Bowden did about this, where he talked about how like a few people tried to call him out for having Space Marines who were people of color in his stories, and he was just like, well, what are you talking about? Like, these people would be there. The entire galaxy isn't just white guys. Like,
and
like, that's not how it works.
Obviously, the whole 40K thing is not based on, you know, individual countries as part of a planet, you know, taking things on. It's a planet. It's the people of a planet taking on things. So on any planet, you are going to have, you know, a mixture of all kinds of, you know, races, and absolutely that should be represented.
Precisely. And I think some of this is going to be a slight tangent. Some of this idea that, you know, planets tend to be very homogenous, like ethnically, comes a little bit from things like Star Trek, because Star Trek really suffers from something called the monoculture, which is essentially you go to a planet and this entire planet has one single culture and it's all the same. And it's kind of not how things work. I mean, if you look at Earth, for example, like, that's not how things work here. It's not how things work in London or Britain.
Yeah.
And so, I think in sci-fi that does tend to be a problem because it can be harder to write, it can be harder to animate, it can be harder to do wardrobe on a just practical, logistical level. And people take that as gospel. It's like, no, that was the constraints of the budget.
Yeah, well, so obviously, like things like Star Wars obviously helped with that, because although you go to a planet and it would be whatever, they would always have a cantina or something on there where they would show a vast array of different species and things like that, which was always cool. But you're right, even in terms of like, I think it's the Snyder Cut. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but it won't be a spoiler.
I have seen that.
Yeah, I won't do any spoilers for anyone because I know it's not particularly been that easy for people in the UK to watch. But you know, same as a lot of sci-fi things, they're reporting to and saying, "Oh, it's a primitive planet. They fight amongst themselves and like because every other planet that they've been to happens to have all the same culture and they're all fighting planetary. Whereas obviously here, you know, each country's got its own political system. Each country's so." And they call that primitive.
Yeah, it's funny actually. You mentioned the Snyder Cut because I did a post on Instagram about this a week or two ago. So the Joss Whedon cut actually cut out all the people of color, basically.
And obviously the thing that Gal Gadot has come out and said that basically he had made some sort of like threat towards her to say, I can either like do really good things with you in this film, or I can ruin you in this film, which is obviously what he appears to have done to Ray Fisher, the guy who plays Cyborg. And obviously that's what he's called him out on his bullshit. And that's what started this, you know, this whole thing with obviously Joss Whedon. But yeah, obviously watching that as a massive Batman fan, my entire arm here is Batman related. So, you know,
excellent.
To watch Cyborg go from this character who gets less than 15 minutes screen time in the original cut to suddenly being central to the whole damn thing. Like, you know, Zack Snyder, because obviously he did Man of Steel, he was obviously central to the original vision of the DCEU. And obviously he saw a bigger part for, Cyborg, which never made it to screen. So obviously everyone came away originally going, why the fuck was Cyborg in there? He didn't do anything. And then he's in there doing everything. And you're like, oh, right, okay.
Yeah, he's the literal heart of the film.
Yeah, maybe some of the stuff that Ray Fisher said, there's a bit of credence there. Like,
yeah, precisely. Wow, we've gone on a massive tangent.
We have there. I know. We got serious. We got serious for a lot of minutes, which is fine. So hang on, I've just got to. We've covered a lot of topics, and I love that. Usually, I try to keep these things to under 30 minutes. We're at 40 odd minutes, but I'm good. I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet.
Good, let's go.
So obviously, looking in terms of playing, then obviously you've got Custodes, which haven't obviously had an update for 9th yet. Not that they need it; they're powerful enough as is. But looking at the original, obviously Space Marines Codex, the first one that came out, and looking at what they're doing with, this could be a very controversial statement now that I'm about to make, but looking at what they've done with Death Guard, looking at what they've done with Drukhari now, have Space Marines been hard done by?
So interesting. It's an interesting thing you should say. So I've had long conversations with Sandman, Ed from the Conclave podcast. And one of the things he's always maintained, and I think is true, is that Space Marines, for the longest time, even though for a long period of time they were like the boogeyman at the end of 8th, sort of beginning of 9th, Space Marines aren't supposed to be the be-all and end-all of the meta. They're actually not supposed to be that great because they're not good at any one particular thing in a way that Drukhari are, for example. Drukhari fight fast, hit hard, but they die quick. Space Marines are supposed to be the all-rounders. They're not supposed to specialize in any particular one thing, which is why they're so good for beginners. They're not supposed to have the level of complexity that Custodes or Death Guard or Necrons are supposed to have. They're supposed to be the gateway drug into the rest of the hobby. And so when people say like, oh, Space Marines are hard done by, no, they're just, to me, I think they're just more simple on purpose. So yeah, that's why.
Yeah, because when the Space Wolves came, their codex came out, I saw that they'd been, for me, more of the lore had gone from the book. They were sanitizing them a little bit by changing them from like wolf priests, and they were going to be librarians. They were literally turning them into. So I did a thing, and I sold all my Space Wolves. I was like, this is too much.
Oh wow!
I know. And then I thought to myself, what should I do? I'll go and buy Eldar, because let's do something ridiculously complicated. I've been in the hobby long enough now. It's about time I picked one of the big boy armies, So, so yeah, and I just kind of thought to myself that, similar to you, now you've said it, they are the poster boys, if you will, of it. And like you say, perhaps it is purely down to they are the good all-rounder, and they are just meant to be, that gateway. You learn to play with Space Marines. Everyone always has Space Marines in some form or fashion, but then you pick a Gene Stealer cult, or you pick a Eldar or Custodes if you want to do something that's just a bit more intricate and a bit more, I suppose it's tactical, because you rely more on command points doing stuff, and you rely more on different rules and stacking stuff and all that sort of stuff. So I just figured I would ask the question, because I was just kind of thinking about it, and I literally was only because I was thinking about it earlier, and I was thinking like Space Marines don't seem to have like the uplift that some of the other armies have, like Drukhari. One of my mates keeps sending me going, I can make a succubus that does this, and you just sit there and go, that just sounds horrific.
Yeah.
And Mortarion has got all the warlord traits and all this other stuff, and I just sit there and think, well, when I get him on the table, he's going to suck for whoever I'm against. And so there's always something in each codex where you kind of look at it and go, that's just going to be a bad day. Whereas the Space Marines didn't really come with that.
So yeah, I basically, so Space Marines I think are still powerful, but they're obvious.
Yeah, they are.
That's the thing. They're obvious. Like the combos are very straightforward by and large. Whereas if you look at Death Guard, particularly if you look at Drukhari, that's a book you have to read a couple of times to really sort of like get your head around it. And that's not something you can do with Marines, because you can't give that Space Marine Codex to a beginner and say, okay, this has the same level of complexity as the Drukhari Codex, because they'll look at it and go, I don't know what any of this is.
Yeah, and you're 100% right. So maybe, you know, I like that. They are the gateway drug into the plastic crack addiction. That is probably
yes.
the best way I've heard of it. So you appear to be a little bit of a lover of the law.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. So what would you say is one of your favorite pieces of lore?
Ooh, okay. Do we mean specifically like a thing that happens?
It can be a
or
thing
do we
that
mean
happened.
like a
It can
book?
be like a whole narrative. It could be a whole book. Anything that. So, for example, for me, there's a couple of points in. Funny enough, I think there's one in an Aaron Dempsey Bowden book and one in a Chris Wright book where it's Bjorn the Fell-Handed, and he just turns up at the right moments. I love Bjorn the Fell-Handed. He's my favorite character.
I know the bit you're talking about with Aaron Dempsey Bowden as well. It's the Grey Knight book, isn't it?
Yeah. So there's one in the Grey Knight book, and then there's one in, I think it's Ashes of Prospero. I can't remember, where they rouse Bjorn up and he just comes out at just the right time, and he's there, and he's like almost like, who disturbs my slumber? And like he's there, and he's like, here I go killing again. Like
yes, love it.
So for me, it's anything that surrounds Bjorn and the way that he's been written.
Interesting. So I kind of have two answers for this. So the first one is, I think, one that will surprise a lot of people, because it's to do with armies that I do not collect.
Okay.
So I have always been fascinated and intrigued by the relationship between Lorgar and Guilliman, mainly from Lorgar's perspective. And I think one of the three most tragic things in the Horus Heresy is, and I just actually re-listened to it on audiobook, is a scene in the book Betrayer by Aaron Dembski Bowden. I don't know if you've read it yet.
No.
Oh,
no, you can go for it. We'll call it a spoiler alert, and then you can go for it, because I'll forget. I have a horrific memory.
So like a minor spoiler alert, but basically, there's this whole big narrative throughout the Lorgar storyline that he thinks Guilliman hates him. He's always thought Guilliman has looked at him just with disgust, has always felt superior to Lorgar, and has always looked at his legion and just been like, oh God, why are you even here? There is a moment in Betrayer where Lorgar has this moment of clarity where he suddenly realizes, oh, bugger, Guilliman never hated me. It was all in my head. And that realization almost breaks Lorgar, because he's like, oh God, I've made so many decisions in my life based on the fact that I thought Guilliman hated me, and he never did. And there's a sort of counterpoint to that, because one of the things that happens with the word bearers and Lorgar is very central to their storyline, is that they are humbled by the Ultramarines. The Ultramarines line up with the Emperor in front of the entire Word Bearers Legion, and the entire Word Bearers Legion has to kneel to Guilliman, some Ultramarines, and the Emperor. And it's this moment of great shame in the Legion. And that's the thing that forces Lorgar on this path towards following chaos.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where because Lorgar and Guilliman are there together when this happens, there's a bit where Lorgar, punches Guilliman basically and says, I can see you're taking pleasure in this. I can see the micro movements in your face. You can't fool me. You're enjoying this. And Guilliman's through clenched teeth, I'm really not. And Lorgar just thinks he's lying, but he's actually not. He doesn't like what's happening to Lorgar. And one of the things I've taken away from that bit of the lore is that the reason the Ultramarines, to my mind, were picked to humble the word bearers is because the word bearers and the Ultramarines are almost two sides of the same coin. They are so similar in so many different ways. They love order and precision and truth and justice. And kind of the emperor using the Ultramarines to humble the word bearers was the emperor's kind of screwed up way of saying to the word bearers, look what you can and should be. You should be like, you should have the record the Ultramarines do. You should have the battle honors. You should have the place in the Imperium that Guilliman has, and you don't. And you need to take a step forward, and you need to take up that mantle. And Lorgar just doesn't understand that lesson at all. And it's just this wonderfully like tragic like end to that storyline when Lorgar has that sudden realization. And it actually is kind of reflected in the Guilliman Primarch novel, because it's just one sentence. And I read this before I read the bit in Betrayer, actually. It's one sentence, and the Guilliman Primarch novel happens just after the Ultramarines have humbled the word bearers at Monarchia. And it's Guilliman just talking to himself, and he says, oh, my brother, what does he say? It's like, my great brother, Lorgar, how could you have done this? And in his heart and what he's saying, he's only got love for his brother.
Still calls him great.
Yeah, he calls him great. And he thinks the world of Lorgar. A lot of the other Primarchs actually do think a lot of like positive things about Lorgar. Because they see him as this like not ethereal, but like this being who is very philosophical and who's like very talented and deserving of a lot of respect, really. A lot of the Primarchs, a lot of Astartes actually as well, speak about Lorgar with this great like language of respect. And yeah, Lorgar just doesn't understand any of that, and he just goes off in this wayward direction. And you're just like, oh, Lorgar, you got it all wrong, you idiot.
He did everything wrong.
Yeah, and it's just, you read it and you're just like, oh God, you're such an idiot.
If you'd only realized like all this time ago.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's one of them. I can tell you the other one if we've got time.
We've got plenty of time.
Oh, excellent. So the other one for me, and I've had conversations about this with people before as well, is Konrad Kurz. Konrad Kurz is a super interesting character, because one of the things a lot of the Primarchs can suffer from is inconsistent writing. The Primarchs tend to be written by numerous different authors who will have a little spin or a different direction they want to go, and it can feel inconsistent sometimes. And I think the worst example of that is Lionel Johnson. Lionel Johnson has been in some terrible novels and has been written badly until his latest Primarch novel, and that's exceptional, and I highly recommend it. On the other hand, Konrad Kurz is the most consistently written and most consistently well written. I don't know if that's I don't know if a reason for that is because he's an absolute lunatic and all you have to do is kind of just portray him being nuts.
Yeah, but I suppose in that instance, yeah, because of how he is, even if no matter what spin an individual writer puts on it, if it's mad enough, you just go, yeah, that fits. That's Conrad.
Precisely.
That's our Conrad.
This next bit is a huge spoiler for Konrad Kurz's Primarch novel. Do you mind? Or I can do the toned down version.
I don't mind.
Okay. So this is a huge spoiler for that. If you haven't read it yet, go read it. It is one of the best Warhammer 40k novels. Guy Haley is amazing. But basically, one of the central points of Konrad Kurz's character is that he knows how he's going to die. He knows in the future the Emperor is going to send an assassin to kill him. He knows the name of the assassin. He knows where it happens. And he's like, right, I know the Emperor kills me. Everything in my life is meaningless because I have no free will. Everything in my life is decided for me. He has absolute certainty in everything he does because he has this precognition. He can see the future a little bit. And so he can see everything that's about to happen. And so morality doesn't come into it because he can see, oh, well, if that's my destiny, I can't fight against it. I know this is going to happen. He thinks everything is determined. It's not. That's the central point. But his power doesn't work the way he thinks it does. He can't see the future. He just sees his choices.
So his choices are leading him there rather than him going there regardless of what he does.
Precisely. And there's a moment where it explains this. There are these two boys in Nostromo. This is before he's been found by the Emperor. And they're in this alleyway and they're attacking this woman. And Kurz looks at the scene and he gets a vision. And the first vision is him killing the two boys. And then the woman runs off. And he's like, okay, cool. The next vision is the boy, he kills the first boy and hesitates when he goes to kill the second boy. And the boy stabs him and runs off. Now, what leads on from that is that the boy, because at this point, Conrad Kurz is like the Batman who kind of kills people of Nostromo. And so, like, he's this legend. And so this boy who stabbed Batman eventually becomes this, like, massive crime boss. And him and Conrad Kurz have to have this, like, epic showdown in, like, this massive tower. And it becomes this massive thing. And the third vision he has is he disarms the boy, I think, and he spends a long time teaching this boy essentially how to be a good person. Teaches him there's a better way. You don't need to be involved with crime. You don't need to do these things. But it takes a long time. And then that boy teaches a few more. And then those people teach a few more. And it creates this cascading effect throughout Nostromo that it becomes a better society. But that's the difficult option. And Kurz doesn't take it. Instead, he just kills both the boys. And then the vision that he had of him killing them both, that's the one that came true. And that's the only one he remembers.
Oh.
Yeah. And you're just like, oh God. Oh my God. It's all lies. Oh my God.
That is, in all fairness, that is a well-written character. Like, that is like, I now know what happens in that book, and I now immediately want to go and read it.
Oh,
so
no. Trust me, there's other things that happen in that book that when I read them, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe they went there. Like,
I'm going to write myself a note because that might be something I have to order. I have to find.
Honestly, so good. Like, the Primarch novels are all fundamentally fantastic. There's only one, and I talked about this in a live stream like yesterday, actually. There's only one Primarch novel that I read, and I was just like, this is awful. Why did they write this? And annoyingly, it's the Vulcan one. It's just bad.
I'm afraid, not every book. Although saying that, the writers they've got on board at the moment, I mean, they're all pretty incredible. Like,
dream team, absolutely.
You can kind of tell that there's a bit more. Although everybody's got their own spin, there's a bit more in terms of like conversation and a bit more research goes into what's been written before, rather than people just writing and going, "This is my take on the character," and then kind of going, "I don't know how you fit this with that, but." This is our book, and we can do what the hell we want with it, sort of thing. But yeah, obviously, I know that they are starting to take a bit more notice of what came before. So, coming up on that hour mark, which this will make this. So you will now hold the distinction of the longest episode, which is, like I say, this has been great. I'm loving it. But I will go into the final question that I ask most people here. Obviously, we're all hobbyists, but what are your hobbies away from this one?
Oh wow! Oh God, I have so many. I don't know what it is with me and just outlandishly expensive hobbies. It's terrible. So when I was at school, I went to boarding school, and I wasn't playing Warhammer then. Left boarding school, went to state school, and that's when I picked up the hobby again for a little bit. But I was not a sporty kid at all. I think some of that was, chronic illness stuff because it affected me from like when I was 13. Some of it was just my brother is a very sporty guy. He plays like national level cricket and all this kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it was never anything that appealed to me until I got to uni. And that's where I started powerlifting. That's where I started fencing. And that's where I started rock climbing as well. And so those are three of the things that I really enjoy. Powerlifting and like just gym in general, I did mainly just to look good more than anything else. And also later on to be a bit more sports specific towards the things I was doing in fencing, because I was captain of the fencing team at uni, which was one of the best things I've ever done. It was amazing. Rock climbing is one of the things I love as well. There's a lot of places to go rock climbing in London. And one of my really good friends from school, he's like my climbing buddy. We go all the time. Well, when we're allowed to.
Of course, yeah.
Exactly. I also, I did my study abroad in Taiwan. And when I was living in Taipei, I picked up longboarding with a couple of Canadian guys that were there. And so for those who don't know, a longboard is like a really big skateboard designed for like cruising on roads and stuff. So yeah, I do a bit of longboarding as well. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I started getting into photography and videography. And I actually started with a camera and stuff because I wanted to do YouTube stuff.
Yeah.
Ended up with, I have a friend of mine who's a DJ. This is the most hipster story ever. But
my friend, DJ.
Yeah, literally, like I've got a buddy of mine from uni who I went to one of her gigs, and they'd seen my like holiday pictures on Instagram, and someone put $4,000 worth of camera stuff in my hands, and I was like, all right, took a couple of pictures, and they were like, these are amazing. Can you come back next week? We've got a gig happening at this place. I was like, okay, and I became their DJ group's official photographer, and so. Amazingly, their DJ group catered to the street dancing scene in East London. Mm-hmm. That's so hipster. Just a little bit. And so I ended up going to all of their gigs, and I think it was throughout 2018. I ended up taking 20 to 30,000 pictures and editing them. And
that's a lot.
Because of that, I literally last week I got published. One of my pictures got published in a magazine. For the first time. I was just like, oh my God,
that's
this
awesome.
Is so cool.
That's an awesome achievement.
Yeah. And then, videography and Warhammer have come on the back of that. So I do so many things.
I've just put 1,500 quid in a photographer's pocket for my wedding. If I'd have known, I don't know. I'm kidding. But I mean, yeah, good photography doesn't come cheap. So, if you're selling them to magazines and stuff like that, that's awesome. Hopefully you'll have more of that to come, especially if you enjoy photography as well. If you do something that you enjoy, it's never really work, is it? That's exactly what they say. I wouldn't know. I have a job and it feels like work. So
I mean, my actual job is that I work with my family, and I don't know if you've ever done that, but it can be hard.
I would probably choose not to. Just based
I don't blame you.
I like them. I like them a lot. I don't think we always get on, especially if there's anything to argue about. We're right there with different opinions, just because sometimes.
I feel you.
Yeah. So, man, this has been awesome. I've really enjoyed this episode. Like I say, it's got the distinction for being the longest, which is absolutely fine by me. And
I could have spoken for hours.
Oh, I could too, but I'm not sure how much people want to listen to my voice. Probably listen to yours. You should start narrating some audio books or something. But I'd like to see you take on some Warhammer characters and narrate some audio books. I'm just saying, you've got a good voice.
I might have a plan for that. I've been thinking about for a while. I'll tell you about it off camera.
Oh, okay. I'm definitely intrigued by that. But yeah, dude, this has been awesome. And when the pandemic lifts a little bit and you've got a space in your calendar and the Bad Moon Cap is open, I'm definitely coming down, and I'll bring my Death Guard so you can hate them and destroy them.
Amazing. Yes, looking forward to this.
But and until then, man, I've been Wolvie for Loaded Bolter. He has been Quipster for the many, many podcasts and TV shows and, I don't know, radio and I don't know what else, celebrity on the red carpet, all the various things
All the
that he
things.
does. And we will catch you next time.